Somewhere in the Roman Empire, in a city you have never heard of, a man is standing in front of a building he has walked past his entire life. It is an ordinary building. Stone walls, a heavy door. Inside, behind that door, sits a clerk with a bronze stylus and a set of tablets that weigh more than he does. On those tablets are names. Every citizen of this city, every person with rights. Every person who legally exists. And today, one of those names is being removed. The clerk does not look up. He does not explain. He simply takes the stylus, sets it against the bronze, and begins to scrape. The metal curls away in small, bright ribbons. The name disappears, and the man standing outside, the man whose name it was, vanishes from the record. Not dead. Still breathing, still standing in the same street he was born on, but gone. No property rights, no legal standing, no protection under Roman law, no record that he ever lived in this city at all. Rome did not need to kill you to destroy you. Rome just needed to erase you. This is the world John of Patmos lived in. This is the world his readers lived in. And this is the world into which John wrote two Greek words, that his audience did not receive as poetry or metaphor or distant theology. They received them the way you receive a verdict. Biblos Zoes, the book of life. Now, before we go any further, I want to tell you something. There is a list somewhere with your name on it, or without it. And by the end of this video, you will understand what that means in a way that most people who have read the Bible their entire lives have never been shown. But we have to start in Rome, because John started in Rome. This is not a video about end times charts. This is not a video about prophecy timelines. This is not a video about mapping the book of Revelation onto newspaper headlines. This is a video about two Greek words, and why the people who first heard them, people who knew exactly what it meant to have a name scraped off a bronze tablet, went very, very still. Revelation, chapter 20, verse 15. One sentence, 11 words in English. Anyone whose name was not found written in the book of life was thrown into the lake of fire. 11 words. And underneath them, 2,000 years of history that most people never see. Let's go back to that building. In the Roman world, every city of any significance kept what was called the tabulae civium, the citizen tablets. Bronze maintained in a public building, often near the forum, where they could be consulted, updated, and, if necessary, corrected. To be on the tablets meant everything. You could own property, you could bring a lawsuit, you could vote, you could call on the protection of Roman law if someone wronged you. You existed, in the eyes of the state, in the eyes of your neighbors, in the eyes of history. To be removed from the tablets meant the opposite of all of that. And Rome had a name for the most severe version of this removal. They called it damnatio memoriae, the condemnation of memory. It was reserved for emperors who disgraced themselves, for generals who betrayed the state, for enemies so dangerous that Rome did not merely want them dead, Rome wanted them unmade. Statues were melted down, coins were recalled and re-stamped, names were chiseled off public inscriptions. You can still see the blank spaces on Roman stonework today. Smooth patches where a name used to be. Portraits were painted over. Official records were altered. The historian Livy documents the practice across centuries of Roman history. The Jewish historian Josephus, writing in the 1st century, records specific cases of Romans whose names were struck from public memory as punishment. Men who had lived, ruled, built, conquered, and then simply ceased to have existed. Rome understood something that we have mostly forgotten, that a name is not just a label. A name is a record. A name is a claim. A name says, this person was here, this person mattered. This person belongs. And when you take the name away, you take all of that with it. Here quotes what most people miss when they read Revelation. John is not writing in a vacuum. John is not inventing a new idea when he talks about a book with names in it. John is writing to people who walk past buildings full of bronze tablets every single day. People who know, in their bodies, not just their minds, what it means to be what it means to be removed from one. And this is why two Greek words land the way they do. Biblos, from the papyrus plant, the material used for official documents, legal records, formal inscriptions. Not a journal, not a notebook. A legal document, an official register. Zoe, and this is the word you need to sit with. Greek has two words for life. Bios, biological, the kind that starts and stops, the kind you share with every animal on Earth. And Zoe, a different order of life entirely, the life of God, eternal life, living life, the kind that does not run out. John does not call it the book of Bios, he calls it the book of Zoe. This is not a register of people who are merely breathing. This is a register of people who are alive in the deepest sense that word can carry, alive the way God is alive, alive with a life that no bronze stylus and no Roman clerk can touch. The people who first heard John's letter read aloud in their house churches understood this immediately. They did not need a commentary. They lived inside the metaphor. Stay with me, because the Hebrew side of this story is older and stranger, and it begins with a man standing on asking God to erase his own name. The year is somewhere around 1300 BC, give or take a generation. Moses has been on the mountain for 40 days, 40 nights, no food, no water, just God and stone, and the weight of a covenant being written with fire. And while he is up there, down below in the valley, the people he led out of Egypt are building a golden calf. You know the story. But here is the detail most people skip past. When Moses comes down the mountain and sees what has happened, when the tablets shatter on the ground and the camp falls silent, Moses does not immediately call for judgment. He goes back up the mountain, and he says something to God that should stop you cold. Exodus chapter 32, verse 32. Moses speaks, and he says, "Please forgive their sin, but if not, then blot me out of the book you have written." Read that again. Moses, the man who parted the sea, the man who spoke face to face with God, the man whose name will be remembered for 3,000 years, offers to be erased, removed, struck from the divine register, in exchange for the people he loves. The Hebrew word behind book here is sefer, an official scroll, a formal, and Moses knows it exists. He knows God keeps one, and he is willing to have his name taken out of it if that is what it costs to keep Israel in. This is the first time in all of Scripture that a human being mentions the divine register by name, and the first thing that happens is a man asks to be removed from it, out of love for someone else. Pay attention to this. Because 1,000 years later, a king sitting in a cave writes a psalm. His name is David, and in Psalm 69, one of the darkest psalms in the entire collection, written when David is surrounded by enemies who want him dead, he prays something that makes most modern readers uncomfortable. He prays that his enemies be blotted out of the book of life. May they be blotted out of the book of life and not be listed with the righteous. The Greek word in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, that John and his readers would have known, is exaleipho, to blot out, to wipe away completely, to erase so thoroughly that no trace remains. It is a violent word, a permanent word, the kind of word you use for something that cannot be undone. But here is what stops me every time I read Revelation chapter 3, verse 5. Jesus speaks to the church at Sardis, and he says, "The one who is victorious will be dressed in. I will never blot out the name of that person from the book of life." The word he uses for blot out is the same word, exaleipho, the same action, the same finality, the same permanence. Except this time, it is a promise in reverse. I will never exaleipho your name. The word that David used as a weapon against his enemies, Jesus uses as a guarantee for his people. And then, and this is the detail that undoes me, John uses that same word one more time in Revelation chapter 21, verse 4. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. Exaleipho, the same word, used for erasing names from a register, used for wiping tears from a face. The most terrifying action in the book, and the most tender action in the book, share the same Greek word. John did not do that by accident. But it gets stranger. 600 years before John writes a single word of revelation, a man named Daniel receives a vision. He sees the end of all things. And in chapter 12, verse 1, an angel tells him, "At that time your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered." Written in the book. Daniel. 600 years before John, same register, same stakes. The divine record is not a New Testament invention. It is not a Revelation invention. It runs like a spine through the entire Bible, from Moses on the mountain, to David in the cave, to Daniel in Babylon, to John on a black volcanic island in the Aegean Sea. And somewhere in the middle of all of this, In a letter Paul writes from a Roman prison to a small church in the city of Philippi, he mentions a man named Clement, a co-worker, someone Philippians know personally. And Paul says of him, almost in passing, his name is in the book of life. Not will be, not might be, is. Present tense, active, already inscribed. The Greek word Paul uses for written is grapho, to inscribe formally, to engrave. The word used for official legal documents, for permanent records, for things that are meant to last. Luke records Jesus saying the same thing to 72 ordinary people he sends out on a mission. People with no titles, no credentials, no religious pedigree. They come back amazed at what they have seen and done. And Jesus tells them, "Do not rejoice because of what you can do. Rejoice because your names are grapho in heaven. Already written, already inscribed, already there. Now watch what happens next. Because there is a man in Revelation chapter 2, a man whose name almost did not survive at all, who proves what that inscription actually means. His name was Antipas. That is almost all we know about him. One name, 2 syllables, and a single line in Revelation chapter 2, verse 13, where Jesus calls him, "My faithful witness, who was put to death in your city." Your city, Pergamon, one of the most powerful cities in the Roman world. Home to a temple to Augustus, home to an altar to Zeus, so massive that the book of Revelation calls it Satan's throne. Home to a Roman administration that expected, demanded, that every citizen participate in the imperial cult. Burn incense to the emperor, acknowledge him as Lord and God. Antipas would not. We do not know his trade, we do not know his family, we do not know how old he was when they came for him. Church tradition says he was burned alive inside a bronze bull, a torture instrument shaped like the animal Israel once worshipped in the desert. We cannot verify that detail, but we know this: he refused. And Rome responded the way Rome always responded to refusal. First, almost certainly, erasure. His name struck from the citizen rolls, his property forfeit, his legal existence cancelled. Damnatio memoriae applied to a man who was, by Rome's accounting, nobody, a Christian, a troublemaker, a name not worth remembering. And then, death. Rome was very good at this. Rome had been erasing people for centuries. Rome erased senators and emperors and generals. Erasing one Christian in Pergamon was not even a difficult afternoon's work. Except, Jesus remembers his name. Not just remembers, announces it. Writes it into a document that will be read in churches for 2,000 years. Antipas, my faithful witness, your city killed him. I have not forgotten him. The man Rome unmade, God named permanently. This is the heart of what John is doing in Revelation. This is why the book of life is not a peripheral detail, not a footnote, not an image you read past on your way to the dragon and the beast and the 7 seals. The book of life is the answer to damnatio memoriae. Rome says, we will erase you. We will strike your name from every tablet, every record, every stone. We will make it as if you never existed. And John, writing from a volcanic island in the Aegean Sea, his own name struck from Roman civic life by Emperor Domitian's exile order, his own legal existence cancelled, John says, there is another register. And Rome does not have a stylus long enough to reach it. This is what I planted at the beginning of this video. There is a list somewhere with your name on it, or without it. And now you understand what John meant. Not a metaphor, not a comfort image. A legal counter-document to the most powerful empire the ancient world had ever produced. And this is where it gets remarkable. Eusebius, the church historian, writing in the early 4th century, documents something that should make you stop breathing for a moment. He records that during Domitian's persecution, Christians across the empire were making a choice. They were voluntarily removing themselves from Roman civic roles, refusing to register in the imperial cult records, refusing to acknowledge Caesar as Lord. And in doing so, legally erasing themselves from Roman life. They chose removal from one list to stay on another. They understood, in a way that cost them everything, that there were 2 registers, and only one of them lasted. And then comes the vision. Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. A great white throne, the dead, all of them, every era, every empire, every person whose name was ever written on bronze or papyrus or stone, standing before it. Books are opened, plural. the records of deeds, the accounting of lives. And then, one more book, singular, different, the Book of Life. And anyone whose name is not found in it is thrown into the lake of fire. John. Quote. Readers did not hear that as abstract theology. They heard it the way you hear a verdict read in a courtroom, the way you hear your name called when everything depends on whether it is called. Rome had its tablets. Caesar had his rolls. The empire had its records of who mattered and who did not. And the Lamb had his scroll. One list ends. Every list ends. Bronze corrodes. Papyrus burns. Empires fall, and their records fall with them. The tabulae civium of 1,000 Roman cities are dust now, the names on them forgotten. The buildings that housed them collapsed. The clerks who maintained them gone, without a trace. The biblos zoes does not corrode. If your name is in it, grapho, inscribed, engraved by the hand that made the stars, then no power in heaven or earth or history has a stylus sharp enough to touch it. So let's close with 3 things. First, biblos zoes is not a metaphor. It is not a comfort image designed to make nervous people feel better about eternity. It is a legal counterdocument to the most powerful erasure machine the ancient world ever built. John's readers understood it that way. We should too. Second, every person John wrote to was facing removal from Roman civic life. Loss of property, loss of standing, loss of legal existence. John's answer was not, stay calm, or, it will all work out. His answer was precise and deliberate. There is another register Caesar does not have administrator access to it. Neither does anyone else. Third, and this is the one I want you to carry with you. The same God who refused to let Moses be erased, who said, no, I will not blot you out, I will find another way, who named Antipas when Rome had already deleted him, who told 72 ordinary people with no credentials and no titles that their names were already written in heaven, that God has not changed his record-keeping habits. The stylus that wrote your name does not run out of ink. And no empire, ancient or modern, has ever built a tool sharp enough to scratch it out. If that landed somewhere real for you today, tell me below. Which part of this hit you hardest? The Roman erasure, Moses on the mountain, Antipas in Pergamon, or something else entirely? I read every comment. And if nobody has ever shown you this side of Scripture before, there is more where this came from. Every week, right here. The bronze tablets of Rome are dust. The scroll remains.